The crystal chandeliers in the grand Meridian ballroom cast diamonds of light across marble floors. Madison Chen stood near the champagne fountain, adjusting her emerald silk dress. Her fingers trembled slightly as she scanned the crowd of investors and property developers. The annual Real Estate Excellence Gala was the most important networking event of the year. Madison had built her reputation on perfect execution and flawless presentation. Tonight, though, she faced a problem she couldn't solve with spreadsheets or market analysis. Her ex-fiancé Richard had just walked in with his new girlfriend, a stunning architect half his age. Madison felt her carefully constructed confidence crack like fine porcelain. She needed a solution, and she needed it in the next 10 minutes before the formal introductions began. Her eyes landed on Owen Parker across the room, her marketing consultant who had been setting up her exhibition booth earlier. He wore a simple black suit that somehow made him look more elegant than the men in their custom-tailored tuxedos. Owen had worked with her company for 6 months, transforming her digital presence and investment portfolios into compelling stories that attracted premium clients. If this story is already pulling you in, please hit that subscribe button for Heartfelt Pulse right now and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss what happens next. Madison made a decision that would change everything. She walked directly toward Owen with the same determination she used in boardroom negotiations. He looked up from his phone and smiled that easy, genuine smile that always made her senior staff relax during tense strategy meetings. "Owen, I need your help with something unusual," Madison said, keeping her voice low and steady. Owen's expression shifted to concern immediately. "Of course, what do you need?" he replied, setting his phone in his jacket pocket. Madison glanced over her shoulder, where Richard was laughing loudly, surrounded by admirers and sycophants. "I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend for tonight, maybe this whole weekend, actually." She said the words coming out faster than she intended. Owen's eyebrows rose in surprise, but he didn't laugh or refuse outright. "Your boyfriend," he repeated carefully, as if testing the words. Madison felt heat rise in her cheeks, something that rarely happened to someone who regularly presented to boardrooms full of skeptical millionaires. "My ex-fiancé just arrived with his new girlfriend, and I cannot give him the satisfaction of seeing me alone," she explained, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I know it's unprofessional and completely inappropriate to ask, but you're the only person here I actually trust right now." Owen studied her face for a long moment, and Madison saw something shift in his dark eyes. "What exactly would this involve?" he asked, and there was no judgment in his tone, only genuine curiosity. Madison released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Just stay close to me tonight, hold my hand during the dinner, maybe dance with me once or twice," she said, trying to make it sound simple and transactional. "There's a weekend retreat tomorrow at the Ashwood estate for the top investors and industry leaders. I already have you registered as my +1 for the marketing presentations. But if you could just continue the appearance through Sunday evening, I would be incredibly grateful." Owen was quiet for several heartbeats, and Madison could hear her own pulse thundering in her ears. She had crossed so many professional lines in the past 60 seconds that her board of directors would probably demand her resignation if they knew. "All right, I'll do it," Owen said finally, and his mouth curved into a small smile. "But you have to promise me one thing." Madison would have promised him almost anything in that moment. "What is it?" she asked. "When this is over, you tell me the real reason you're so afraid of your ex seeing you alone," Owen said, and there was a gentleness in his voice that made something in Madison's chest tighten. "Because the Madison Chen I've worked with for 6 months doesn't care what anyone thinks, especially not about her personal life." Before Madison could respond, the ballroom lights dimmed slightly, and the master of ceremonies approached the microphone. Owen extended his hand toward her, and she took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. His fingers closed around hers with a confidence that somehow felt both protective and equal. They walked together toward the assigned seating area, and Madison felt dozens of eyes track their movement. She could see Richard's face across the room, his expression shifting from smug satisfaction to confusion as he registered Owen's presence beside her. The dinner service began with the carefully orchestrated precision of high society events. Madison found herself hyper-aware of every point where her body touched Owen's, their shoulders occasionally brushing as they reached for wine glasses, his knee briefly pressing against hers under the table's edge when he shifted position. He played his role, perfectly laughing at appropriate moments, leaning close to whisper observations about the pretentious speeches, making her feel like they were conspirators in an elaborate game. "Your ex keeps staring over here," Owen murmured during the third course, his lips close enough to her ear that she could feel his breath. "Should I do something more obvious?" Madison's heart stuttered. "Like what?" she whispered back. Owen's hand found hers on the table, his thumb tracing slow circles on her palm. "Like this," he said, and the simple gesture felt impossibly intimate. Madison looked down at their joined hands and felt something dangerous unfold in her chest. This was supposed to be a simple arrangement to save her pride, but the way Owen touched her felt nothing like acting. The dinner continued with speeches from industry leaders and awards for outstanding achievements in property development and investment. Madison accepted a recognition for her company's sustainable luxury housing project, and Owen stood and applauded with genuine pride in his expression. When she returned to her seat, he leaned over and said quietly, "You were brilliant up there, you always are." Something about the way he said always made Madison realize Owen had been paying attention to her in ways she hadn't noticed. The dancing began after dessert, and the ballroom transformed into something softer and more romantic. Couples moved onto the polished floor, swaying to a live orchestra, playing standards from decades past. Owen stood and offered his hand again. "May I have this dance, Miss Chen?" he said with mock formality that made her smile. Madison rose and let him lead her onto the floor. His hand settled on the small of her back, warm through the thin silk of her dress, and she placed her palm on his shoulder. They moved together, easily finding a rhythm that felt natural and unrehearsed. "You're a good dancer," Madison observed, surprised. Owen smiled, that devastating smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "My mother insisted on lessons when I was 13. I hated it then, but it's proving useful now," he said. They swayed in comfortable silence for several moments before Owen spoke again. "He's watching us. You know your ex. He looks like he swallowed something bitter." Madison didn't look toward Richard, keeping her eyes on Owen instead. "Good," she said and meant it. "Does it bother you that I'm using you like this?" she asked, the question emerging before she could stop it. Owen's hand pressed slightly firmer against her back, drawing her incrementally closer. "You're not using me, Madison," he said, his voice dropping lower. "I offered, remember, and besides, this is the best evening I've had in months, even if it's all pretend." The word pretend hung between them like a question neither of them wanted to answer. The song ended, and another began, something slower and more intimate. Other couples left the floor, but Owen and Madison remained swaying in their small pocket of space. "I was engaged to Richard for 2 years. Madison heard herself say the words spilling out unprompted. "He proposed at a company merger celebration, very public, very performative. I should have known then that it was more about image than love." Owen listened without interrupting, his eyes steady on her face. "When I started focusing more on expanding the investment portfolio, instead of planning weddings and charity galas, he started pulling away." Madison continued. "He said I was married to my work, that I cared more about property values than building a home. I told him he was right." Owen's expression shifted to something that looked like understanding mixed with sadness. "And now you think being alone proves he was right about you," he said gently. Madison felt her throat tighten. "Doesn't it?" she whispered. "No," Owen said with quiet certainty. "It proves you knew yourself well enough to choose authenticity over a comfortable lie, and that takes more courage than most people ever manage." Madison felt tears prick her eyes, and she blinked them back, refusing to cry at a gala, surrounded by competitors and colleagues. Owen must have seen her struggle, because he pulled her closer until her forehead rested against his shoulder. To anyone watching, they were just another couple lost in the music, but Madison knew this moment was crossing lines they couldn't uncross. When the song ended, Owen walked her back to their table and excused himself to take a phone call. Madison watched him go, feeling off balance in ways that had nothing to do with champagne. Her assistant director, Patricia, approached looking pleased. "Madison, darling, I had no idea you were seeing someone," Patricia said, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Owen seems absolutely devoted. The way he looks at you is quite something." Madison managed a smile that felt tight. "It's still very new," she said, which was technically true in the most complicated way possible. The gala wound down near midnight and guests began filtering toward the exits and waiting cars. Owen returned to Madison's side as naturally as if they had been together for years. "Ready to leave?" he asked, and she nodded. They walked through the grand lobby and out into the cool night air where valets scrambled to retrieve luxury vehicles. Madison's driver pulled up in her black Mercedes, but before she could move toward it, Richard's voice cut through the night. "Madison, wait a moment," he called, walking over with his girlfriend trailing behind. Madison felt Owen's hand find the small of her back again, steady and grounding. Richard approached with that familiar, arrogant expression he wore when he thought he had the advantage. "I wanted to introduce you to Amber," Richard said, gesturing to the young woman beside him. "Amber, this is my ex-fiancé, Madison, and her, well, I don't believe we've met," he said, looking at Owen dismissively. Owen extended his hand with cool professionalism. "Owen Parker, I handle Madison's marketing and brand strategy," he said, then added with deliberate emphasis, "among other things." The implication hung in the air, and Madison saw Richard's jaw tighten. "How nice that you found companionship in your work," Richard said, the condescension dripping from every word. "Though I suppose when you spend every waking hour at the office the lines naturally blur." Madison felt anger flash hot in her chest, but before she could respond, Owen spoke. "Actually, I'm the one who pursued Madison," he said, his voice casual but firm. "I've worked with dozens of executives and developers, but I've never met anyone with her combination of vision, integrity, and genuine care for the communities she builds. I couldn't help but fall for that." The words hit Madison like a physical impact, because Owen delivered them with such sincerity that even she almost believed they were true. Richard's expression soured further. "Well, I hope you understand what you're getting into," he said to Owen. "Madison is brilliant at building empires, but relationships require something she's never been able to give: complete emotional availability." The comment was designed to wound, and it did. Madison felt old shame and doubt rise in her throat, but Owen's response came swift and sharp. "That's interesting because the woman I know is remarkably emotionally available, just selectively so." Owen said, his tone still pleasant but with steel underneath. "She invests her heart in things that matter and doesn't waste it on people who can't appreciate what she offers. I'd say that's wisdom, not inability." Richard looked like he wanted to continue the confrontation, but Amber tugged on his arm, clearly uncomfortable. "We should go, Richard, our car is here," she said softly. Richard gave Madison one last look that mixed regret with resentment. "Good luck to you both," he said, though the words sounded more like a curse than a blessing. When they left, Madison released a shaky breath and realized she was trembling. Owen turned to her, immediately his hands coming up to rest on her shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked, his eyes searching her face. "That was intense. I'm sorry, I probably overstepped, but I couldn't let him talk to you like that." Madison looked up at this man who had defended her so fiercely and felt something fundamental shift inside her. "You were perfect," she said, her voice unsteady. "Thank you for that, for all of this. I know it's beyond what you signed up for." Owen's hands remained on her shoulders, warm and solid. "Madison, I need to tell you something," he began, but the valet interrupted, announcing her car was blocking the entrance and needed to move. The moment broke and they climbed into the back of the Mercedes. The drive to Madison's penthouse took 20 minutes through quiet city streets, and neither of them spoke much. The air between them felt charged with everything unsaid. When they arrived at her building, Owen moved to say good night, but Madison surprised herself. "Come up for a drink," she said. "We should discuss tomorrow's retreat schedule, and I promise I make much better coffee than whatever they'll serve at the gala breakfast." Owen hesitated for just a moment before nodding. They rode the elevator to the 23rd floor in silence, and Madison unlocked her door, revealing the minimalist luxury of her private space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights, and carefully chosen art pieces adorned the walls. "This is beautiful," Owen said, stepping inside and looking around with genuine appreciation. "It feels like you somehow calm but with hidden depths." Madison smiled despite her nerves and moved to the kitchen area. "Wine or actually, I promised coffee, didn't I?" she said. "Wine is perfect," Owen replied, settling on the leather sofa that faced the windows. Madison poured 2 glasses of red wine from a bottle she had been saving for a special occasion, though she wasn't sure this qualified, or perhaps it was the most special occasion in recent memory. She carried the glasses over and sat beside Owen, not too close, but closer than professional distance required. "So tomorrow, we drive to Ashwood Estate together," Madison said, trying to return to the practical arrangements. "The retreat runs through Sunday evening with various networking sessions, investment presentations, and unfortunately several more formal dinners where couples are expected." Owen accepted his wine and took a slow sip. "I'll play whatever role you need," he said. "But Madison, I meant what I said earlier about needing to tell you something." Madison's heart began to race. "What is it?" she asked. Owen set down his wine glass and turned to face her fully. "This started as me helping you through an awkward situation, I understand that," he said. "But I need you to know that what I said to Richard wasn't entirely acting. I have developed feelings for you, real ones, and I can't keep pretending otherwise even if it complicates everything." The confession hung in the air between them, and Madison felt like she couldn't breathe. 6 months of working together flashed through her mind in rapid succession. Owen staying late to perfect presentation materials, the way he always remembered how she took her coffee, his genuine excitement when her project succeeded, the careful respect he showed her boundaries. She had attributed all of it to professionalism, but now she saw it through a different lens. "Owen, she started but didn't know how to finish. "You don't have to say anything," Owen interrupted gently. "I just needed you to know so that this weekend you understand that when I hold your hand or stand close or look at you a certain way, it's not all pretend for me, it's real, and it has been for a while now." Madison felt tears well up again, and this time she didn't fight them. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Richard was right about one thing: I do pour everything into my work, because it's safe. Buildings and investments don't leave you, they don't decide you're not enough." Owen reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "You are more than enough, Madison," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're extraordinary, and anyone who couldn't see that doesn't deserve you." Something broke open in Madison's chest, and before she could overthink it, she closed the distance between them and kissed him. The kiss was gentle, at first tentative, like a question being asked. But then Owen's hand came up to cup her face, and Madison's fingers found his collar, and it deepened into something that felt like truth. They broke apart, both breathing hard, and Owen rested his forehead against hers. "Tell me this is okay," he whispered. "Tell me I haven't misread everything." "You haven't," Madison said, her voice shaking. "I've been lying to myself about what I feel because it seemed impossible. But Owen, I don't want to pretend anymore either." They kissed again, and this time there was no hesitation. When they finally pulled apart, Owen smiled, that beautiful, genuine smile, and said, "So does this mean our fake dating arrangement just became real?" Madison laughed, and it felt like relief and joy combined. "I think it became real the moment you agreed to help me," she said. They stayed up until nearly 3 in the morning talking about everything. Owen's childhood growing up in a small coastal town, Madison's struggles to prove herself in a male-dominated industry, their shared love of architecture and coffee and old films. By the time Owen finally left to go home and pack for the weekend retreat, Madison felt like she was glowing from the inside. The next morning, they drove to Ashwood Estate together in Madison's car. The estate was a sprawling property 2 hours outside the city, featuring a restored Victorian mansion, surrounded by manicured gardens and guest cottages. The retreat officially began with a lunch reception where Madison introduced Owen to various colleagues and investors. She noticed how naturally he charmed people, asking intelligent questions about their projects and making genuine connections. But she also noticed the way his eyes kept finding her across crowded rooms, the small smile he saved just for her. The afternoon session focused on emerging markets and sustainable development strategies. Madison delivered a presentation on her latest luxury eco-housing project, and Owen watched from the second row, his expression radiating pride and support. When she finished, the applause was enthusiastic, and several major investors approached her immediately with questions about partnership opportunities. During the break, Owen brought her a bottle of water and leaned close. "You're going to close at least 3 major deals this weekend," he said. "They're mesmerized, and honestly so am I." Madison felt warmth spread through her chest. "You're good for my confidence," she said softly. "I'm just honest about what I see," Owen replied. That evening's dinner was held in the estate's grand dining hall with assigned seating that placed couples together. Madison and Owen found themselves at a table with 2 other executive couples, and the conversation flowed easily. But under the table, Owen's hand found Madison's knee, and the simple touch made her hyper-aware of every breath. After dinner, the group moved to the library for drinks and informal networking. Madison was deep in conversation with a potential investor from Singapore when she felt Owen's presence behind her. He didn't interrupt, just stood close enough that she could feel his warmth, and somehow that silent support made her pitch even stronger. The investor agreed to a follow-up meeting in 2 weeks and shook both their hands. When he walked away, Madison turned to Owen. "How do you do that?" she asked. "Do what?" Owen replied, looking genuinely confused. "Make me feel like I can do anything just by standing nearby," Madison said. Owen's expression softened, and he glanced around the crowded library before taking her hand. "Come with me for a minute," he said, leading her through a side door and out onto a stone terrace overlooking the gardens. The night air was cool and clear, and above them stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. Owen pulled Madison close, wrapping his arms around her from behind as they looked out at the landscape. "This is real, right?" Madison whispered. "This isn't just the weekend and the arrangement, we're actually doing this." Owen turned her in his arms so they were face to face. "Madison, I have wanted this since the 3rd week I started working with you," he said. "You were presenting to your board about the Riverside development, and you got so passionate about including affordable housing units, even though it would cut into profit margins. You said some things matter more than maximum returns, and I thought this woman is remarkable, and I'm in serious trouble." Madison laughed softly. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked. "Because you were my client and I had professional boundaries to maintain," Owen said. "And because I thought someone like you would never look at someone like me, a consultant from a small firm without the pedigree or the connections." "Someone like me," Madison repeated. "Owen, you're brilliant and kind, and you see people actually see them. You made my company's story matter to audiences who never cared before. That's not small, that's everything." They kissed under the stars, and Madison felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, Owen smiled. "We should probably go back before people start gossiping," he said. "Let them gossip," Madison replied, surprising herself. "I'm tired of hiding what matters." They returned to the library hand in hand, and Madison noticed several approving looks from colleagues who had known her for years and never seen her so openly happy. The weekend continued with morning strategy sessions, afternoon workshops, and evening social events. Madison and Owen fell into an easy rhythm, supporting each other publicly and stealing private moments whenever possible. On Sunday morning, they took a walk through the estate gardens before the final brunch and business meetings. The grounds were spectacular, with late autumn flowers still blooming and stone paths winding through carefully designed landscapes. "I don't want this weekend to end," Madison admitted as they walked. "When we go back to the city, everything gets complicated again." Owen stopped walking and turned to face her. It doesn't have to be complicated, he said. Yes, I work for your company, and yes, we'll need to navigate that professionally, but Madison, we're both adults, we can figure this out if we want to. Do you want to? Madison asked, her voice small and vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed. More than anything, Owen said without hesitation. I want breakfast meetings that turn into actual breakfast. I want to know what you're like on lazy Sundays. I want to be the person you call when you close a major deal. Or when you have a terrible day, I want all of it, the real relationship, not the weekend fantasy. Madison felt tears prick her eyes again. I want that too, she whispered. I'm scared I'll mess it up, but I want to try. Then we'll try together, Owen said, pulling her close. And if you get too focused on work, I'll remind you to come up for air. And if I get too caught up in campaigns and strategies, you'll ground me, we'll figure it out. The final brunch was a relaxed affair with people exchanging contact information and making plans for future collaborations. Madison secured 2 significant investment partnerships and received invitations to present at 3 upcoming industry conferences. As they packed up to leave, several colleagues approached her privately. Patricia pulled her aside near the entrance. I've known you for 8 years, Madison, she said warmly. I've never seen you this happy, this relaxed. Whatever you and Owen have, keep it, because it's clearly good for you. Madison smiled genuinely. I intend to, she said. The drive back to the city felt different from the drive up. Instead of nervous anticipation, there was comfortable certainty. Owen drove while Madison answered emails, and they talked about everything from favorite books to childhood memories to their hopes for the future. When they reached the city, Owen parked near Madison's building, but neither of them moved to get out immediately. So what happens now? Madison asked, the question she had been avoiding. Now we date for real, Owen said simply. I take you to dinner not because we're pretending, but because I want to spend time with you. We go to museums and try new restaurants and argue about whether modern architecture has lost its soul. Madison laughed. You think modern architecture has lost its soul? She asked. Some of it, absolutely, Owen said, grinning. But that's a conversation for our first official date, which, if you're available, I'd like to schedule for tomorrow night. I'm available, Madison said, warmth flooding through her. Good, because I've been planning this date in my head for months. I just never thought I'd actually get to take you on it, Owen admitted. They kissed goodbye in the car, and Madison floated up to her penthouse feeling like everything had shifted. Monday morning, she arrived at her office early and found Owen already there, setting up for their regular weekly strategy meeting. When her assistant stepped out to grab coffee, Owen came around the desk and kissed her properly. Good morning, he said against her lips. Good morning, Madison replied, smiling. We should probably establish some boundaries for work, she said reluctantly. Owen nodded. Professional during business hours, he suggested. But I'm taking you to lunch, and that's non-negotiable. Deal, Madison agreed. The day proceeded normally with meetings and calls and project reviews. But everything felt different now because Madison kept catching Owen's eye across conference tables and seeing promise there. That evening, Owen took her to a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood she had never explored. They sat across from each other in a corner booth and talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. When Owen walked her to her door, Madison invited him up for coffee, and they both knew it wasn't really about coffee. They made coffee anyway and sat on her sofa watching the city lights. I need to tell you something, Madison said, feeling nervous. What is it? Owen asked, turning to face her. I'm probably going to be difficult sometimes, Madison admitted. I'm used to being in control, and I work too much, and I have trouble asking for help, and I might push you away when I'm stressed. Owen listened without interrupting, his hand finding hers. And I'm probably going to be too accommodating sometimes, because I'm used to being the support person, not the priority, he said. I might not speak up when I should, and I might let work boundaries blur, and I definitely will want to fix everything even when you just need me to listen. Madison smiled at his honesty. So we're both going to mess this up sometimes, she said. Probably, Owen agreed. But we'll figure it out together, And Madison, I'm not Richard. I'm not going to punish you for being ambitious or successful. I love that about you. And I'm not going to take you for granted, Madison promised. You're not my employee or my assistant. You're my partner in this. And I want to make sure you always feel that. They sealed the promises with a kiss that led to more kisses, and eventually, Madison led Owen to her bedroom. They made love slowly, tenderly, and afterward lay tangled together in the dark. I'm falling in love with you, Owen whispered against her hair. I think I might already be there. Madison's breath caught. She had been trying not to think those words, afraid of the vulnerability they represented, but hearing Owen say them made her brave. I love you too, she whispered back. It terrifies me, but I really do. Owen pulled her closer. We'll be terrified together, he said, and somehow that made it feel manageable. The weeks that followed weren't always easy. They had to navigate the professional complications of their relationship with Madison, formally declaring it to her board, and establishing clear boundaries around Owen's consulting role. Some colleagues gossiped, but most were supportive, especially when they saw how happy Madison seemed. Owen introduced Madison to his family over Thanksgiving, and she nervously prepared to meet his mother, who she had heard so much about. But Mrs. Parker welcomed her warmly and told embarrassing stories about Owen's childhood that made Madison laugh until her sides hurt. Christmas came, and Madison invited Owen to spend it with her since her own family was scattered across different countries pursuing various business ventures. They cooked dinner together in her penthouse and exchanged thoughtful gifts. Owen gave her a first edition book on sustainable architecture that he had tracked down through rare book dealers. Madison gave him a vintage camera she knew he had been searching for to pursue his photography hobby. This is the best Christmas I've had in years, Madison admitted as they sat by her small decorated tree. Me too, Owen said, pulling her close. Every day with you is the best day. 6 months after the gala, where everything began, Madison's company landed the biggest contract of her career, a multi-billion-dollar sustainable housing development that would transform an entire waterfront district. The celebration party was held at the same venue where they had first pretended to be together. But this time, when Owen held her hand and pulled her onto the dance floor, there was nothing fake about it. Remember when you asked me to pretend to be your boyfriend, Owen said as they swayed to the music. Best decision I ever made, Madison said. Asking you or falling for you, Owen asked, smiling. Both, Madison replied. Definitely both. They danced surrounded by colleagues and competitors and investors, but in that moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the room. Richard was there too, with yet another new girlfriend, but Madison didn't spare him a glance. She had everything she wanted right here in her arms. I love you, she said, looking up at Owen. I love you too, he replied. Forever if you'll have me. Forever sounds perfect, Madison whispered. And as the music swelled and the chandeliers sparkled overhead, Chen realized that sometimes the best relationships aren't the ones you plan. They're the ones that surprise you, the ones that start as pretend and become the most real thing you've ever known. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who believes in second chances and unexpected love. Your support means everything to our Heartfelt Pulse community and helps us bring more stories that celebrate the courage it takes to be vulnerable and the beauty of finding love when you least expect it.